remember, to honor, and to celebrate his life. So as I look across this group, I see a lot of different relationships. You knew him as your son, your brother, your uncle, your nephew, your cousin, your classmate, your coworker, your colleague, your neighbor, and of course for all of us, he was a friend. I was lucky and blessed to have Billy as a friend for more than 50 years. We met as middle school boys. We were inseparable during high school. Then we made the adjustment to going to different colleges in different states and different athletic conferences. When we only saw each other during summer break. Then unfortunately, we both became very busy professional men, and we saw each other very rarely. But every time we talked, or saw each other, or even texted, we picked up right where we left off the last time. And the primary reason was because Billy would immediately launch into a recitation of all the funny and special memories that we shared over the years. Unfortunately, we're here to celebrate his life because he passed away at the way too early age of 58. And the last communication that he and I had was about 3 months ago, and we were making plans that we were going to get together next month to celebrate my 60th birthday, and then we'd be celebrating his 60th birthday not too far in the distance. So as I've tried to wrap my head around this situation and this loss, the other day I reviewed a list of people, notable people, who died in their 50s. Babe Ruth, Jackie Robinson, John Denver, Steve McQueen, Jim Henson, Michael Landon, George Harrison, John Ritter, Christopher Reeve, Luther Vandross, and Patrick Swayze. And that's just a partial list. But there are two people who also passed away in their 50s who in my mind have a special connection to Billy. The first was Skip Prosser, who was the Wake Forest basketball coach for several years until he died at age 56 in 2007. Now I know that Billy watched him coach many times, both here in Winston-Salem and at the ACC tournament, but the connection that I'm thinking about with Billy is a statement that someone made about Skip Prosser when he died. This was his former athletic director, I think at Loyola, before he came to Wake Forest, and he said, Skip Prosser was a Renaissance man coaching college basketball. Well, that struck me because when I came to Wake Forest as a freshman in 1979, and the only thing I remember about my freshman orientation package was an essay that some Wake Forest professor had written about the Renaissance man. So I became really fascinated by that concept. And I know it's dangerous to try to describe it in a single sentence out here in this park this afternoon, but basically the Renaissance man or woman is essentially a very gifted person who develops exceptional knowledge and abilities and accomplishments in a broad range of areas. And you would typically think of intellect, creativity, athletics, personality, and spirituality. I've only known a handful, and I've been thinking about this, like I said, since 1979. I've only known a handful of people who I would say was a Renaissance man or a Renaissance woman, and Billy Stokes was at the top of the list. Think about it. He was a historian.
Absolutely.
Billy was a historian. He was a writer. He was a musician. He was an artist. He was a humorist. He was an avid reader. He was an athlete, and he was a walking encyclopedia of sports trivia, statistics, and technique and strategy. It's easy to imagine Billy in a group like this. You can just picture him. He would go on one side of the group and talk to someone, give you the history of Spider-Man and the entire roster of Marvel and DC superheroes. He could walk across the room to someone else and give you the past history and the future prospects of your favorite college basketball team. He could walk over to somebody else and recite song lyrics from songs he heard like 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago from his favorite musicians. He could then go to someone else and give you the entire history of the Young and the Restless, the Bold and the Beautiful, As the World Turns, and the Guiding Light, which are no longer around. And then he could sit down with someone else and describe the latest great book that he read, or the movie that he saw, or the play that he saw. I was always playing catch up with Billy. Billy was always on the cutting edge. He always had the newest gadget, the newest trend, the newest food craze. And you could even get excited and come to Billy and say, hey, Billy, it's like, oh, no, I got that. He always had it. Yesterday, his sister Susan and I were riding around in the car, not too far from here, and the song Rock Lobster by the B-52s came on the radio. And I told her, I said, the first person who ever told me about the B-52s and played the song Rock Lobster was Billy Stokes, and I remember where I was when he did it. He was the first person who told me about I think he'd been to the Maccabee's house, and he said, there's this new thing called home box office, and you watch movies that you see at the theater on your TV, and I'm like, I don't understand. He was the first person who showed me a Monty Python movie. He was the first person who told me about The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. So if Skip Prosser was a Renaissance man coaching college basketball, Billy Stokes was a Renaissance man working in wealth management. The other person that I associate with Billy is Steve Jobs. Not only because I sat at Billy's desk yesterday and was surrounded by Apple products, but also Steve Jobs, who again died after a long battle with cancer in his 50s. Billy posted in August of 2019, Billy posted on his Facebook page an article that purported to list the last words, some last sayings from Steve Jobs. And there's a long list, but the final one in the list is the one that really struck me. And it said, love the people God sent you. One day he will need them back. I'm sure Billy thought about that to remind himself to live that way. But you also can't help but think about the amazing love and care that he's received in the last 3 years, especially from his sister Susan and his mother Grace. So while it's heartbreaking for us today, I think we probably just shouldn't be surprised that God needs people like Billy in heaven to make it the special place that we all believe it's going to be. And I knew Billy as a spiritual man of faith. And I think that I always get detected that Billy saw the sacred in the ordinary. And I'm standing right here by my foot is a brick that's in loving memory of Sissy Stokes, Sweet Pea, 2011-2021. It's literally right here by my foot. And you know, Billy's heart was broken several months ago when he lost his dog Sissy. But he also during the past couple of years, he posted something on Facebook, just one sentence. He said, think about it, dog is God spelled backwards. And so he made the comment that God had given him this very special creature to comfort him during the tough time he was going through. There's a verse in the Bible where the prophet Micah describes what God expects us to do. And he says, do justice, love kindness, and walk humbly with your God. That's how Billy Stokes lived his life. And that's why he left such a huge footprint on our hearts, and we celebrate his life today. Please join me in a quick prayer. God, we thank you for the life of Bill Stokes. This is a difficult day for us, but we rejoice because of Billy's life and the acts of love that he showed to us. We celebrate his life well lived, his accomplishments, and his humility and commitment to you. As we continue to remember him, we pray that you will grant him eternal rest and that your perpetual light shine upon him. Amen.
I don't want to say much, but what I will tell you is that as I saw Billy on Father's Day, I saw a man who had fought a fight. I saw my friend loving his mother, loving his sister, loving all of us. I saw a warrior, even 3 years ago when he was diagnosed. He worked. He would go get radiation, chemotherapy, whatever he did well. And it is something to be said about a man of that character and that quality and that dignity. And so we celebrate our friend, our brother, our son, whatever he is to you, let it be to you. But I will tell you, when I spoke to Bill, he would say to me, continue to pray for me and tell others continue to pray for me. I feel them all. This song is coming from me, but I choose to believe that this is what he would want to say to all of us if he had that opportunity. God has smiled on me. He has set me free. Oh, God has smiled on me, and he's been good to me. Amazing grace, oh, how sweet that sound that saved a wretch like me. No, I once was lost, but now I am found. I was blind, but now I see. Must Jesus bear, oh, the cross alone, and all the world go free? No, but there's a cross for everyone, and there's a cross for me. My God has smiled on me, and he has set me free. Oh, God has smiled on me. You know that he's been good to me.
This will undoubtedly be one of the most difficult things that I've ever had to do, so I'll ask for your thoughts and prayers before I get started. I hope that I can just get through this. I'm going to do my best to stick with my notes because when I start talking about Billy, I could be here all day. We have a lot of history together, shared a lot of memories. So I will stick with my notes. I don't want you to boo me from this podium. So please pray with me. I'm not going to preach to you today, but I'm only here to share a few thoughts for the one that we've come to celebrate. Bill Stokes, my friend Billy. And with that said, when speaking with Susan regarding the celebration of life, she was mindful to state the fact that Greg has already stated to us all this morning that Billy was a spiritual man. I'm going to talk to you a bit about that a bit later. Some of the conversations that we've had, particularly in the most recent years, there will be more about that to come a bit later. I would just want to take an opportunity to recognize a few of the folks that I see here this morning. Grace, who was like a second mother to me, who she and Susan, Big Bill we called him, and of course Billy, adopted me somewhat as a son and welcomed me into their house, and for that I am eternally grateful. see the Baileys here, who had that same sort of impact on this young boy from Whitted Street, growing up with only dreams, but both of these families instilled a bit of confidence in me that allowed me to be what I am today. Not that I'm much, but certainly much more than I was born into. So I thank you for that. Enough said about that. We've come to talk about my friend Billy this morning. Billy and I met in some of the most unusual circumstances. Neither one of us were big partiers, especially in high school. I don't know what happened when he got to the University of Tennessee. We don't talk about that a whole lot. At least in high school, we shared very similar goals and aspirations. And I recall one particular night there was a party during the spring of the year, and I'm standing outside. Everyone else is inside, having a good time, and I hear this music coming from this little blue Toyota parked down the street, and it was Billy. And so we navigated together, and from there we began to talk, and that night was the beginning of a lifelong friendship. We shared many things in common. And I'm just going to give you a short list of some of those. Greg has mentioned a number of those, but there's Billy had a love for sports, and you're right. He was a walking encyclopedia. Could recite names, players, circumstances, time, scores at the drop of the dime, and I always respected him for that. We had a love together for Tuesday's Restaurant in the Asheville Mall. Many of you from the western part of the state might remember that. But that was a big deal for us as high school students to be able to go to Tuesdays and order a steak on Friday night, and we did that as often as we could. We had a love for Westgate Mall in Spartanburg, and I see the Maccabees here and the times that we would talk about the Maccabee family on the way to Westgate Mall, and of course you can't go to Westgate Mall without going to the Beacon. And that was a trip that Billy and I made many times together. We loved eating ice cream in Grace's kitchen, and that's something that we were chastised for many times, because after eating the ice cream, of course, we wouldn't wash the bowls and put them away. But we're thankful that Grace tolerated us and allowed us to participate in her kitchen and be a part of her household. Billy and I had a love for member guest weekend.
Oh, God.
Grace says, "Oh, God," and that's right. That's something that on Sunday after member guest was over, boy, we began planning the very next year. And we loved that weekend and couldn't wait for Gatewood to come over from Asheville and spend time with us. And I won't go into the details of what happened, but we loved having that opportunity to be treated as grown men by Big Bill and by Gatewood. We had a love for the water and the beach. We loved bad horror movies, and Billy and I would go and sit towards the front of the studio and just ridicule these movies every time they came out. We couldn't wait on the next horror movie, and I'm surprised we never got kicked out. We loved the Western Sizzler in Hendersonville. But there's a story to that one. Billy and I were part of the red and white newspaper staff under Miss Alice Lawson. And every now and then she would allow some of us to go out to sell ads. But somehow Billy and I always felt that there was a need for us to go to the Western Sizzler to sell ads. And on this one particular day, while we were supposed to be eating lunch in the cafeteria, we were sitting there eating a steak. And boy, that was a big deal for us. And it just so happened that right in the middle of chewing, we hear this voice come over the intercom, Billy Stokes and Terry Boyd. You have a call at the hostess. Miss Lawson had found us. To this day, I can't tell you who turned us in, but we loved the Western Sizzler. We loved our families. And Susan will be the first to tell you how overprotective I was of her during her high school years, probably to a point of resentment at times. Billy loved my family. He loved my boys. I recall those days at Wild Dunes when my wife and I would wake up and come downstairs in the morning, and there's Jared and Joshua, probably 8 and 5 years old, sitting on Billy's lap drinking a cup of coffee. And I would look at that and I would say that there's something not right about this picture. And my boys would look at me and say, but Billy said it was okay. And my response was, but Billy's not your daddy. I don't know that they ever really figured that part out. We had a love for many things together. Most of all was our common love for music. Greg has already touched on that. We would sometimes get in the car in Hendersonville and just drive around for hours listening to music. During those years, there wasn't a whole lot more to do in Hendersonville, but we really enjoyed those times together. And there are the deepest secrets and thoughts that we would share with one another during those times that I'll never forget, some of which I'll take to my grave with me. But I really enjoyed those times with Billy. I know it's hot, but if you just give me a few minutes, I want to talk to Billy from the perspective of how I remember him. I call him my music man. Billy was the one that actually taught me how to read music. That was one thing that I was very envious of. As Greg said, Billy could do just about anything. Anything he set his mind to, he could do it. And we would have these challenges in his driveway of shooting free throws. And 9 times out of 10, Billy would beat me. Of course, we'd go inside and get on the pool table. 9 times out of 10, Billy would beat me. I could never beat him in the swimming pool swimming. But one thing that we did share together was a common love for music. When I was thinking about this and how this related to Billy's life, the best definition that I found for music was this. Music is a vocal or instrumental or both, combined with in such a way as to produce beauty, a form, harmony, and expression of a common emotion of love. Stated another way, music is a spoken and or unspoken movement to create beauty of form, harmony, and expression of love. In the natural, each and every one of us know Billy as that person, one who produced beauty of form, harmony, and certainly the expression of love. It was evident because I look around today and this small gathering is just a testimony that everybody loved Billy. When I say everybody, I mean everybody. I don't know that he ever met a stranger, and certainly never an enemy. if there was ever a person that combined those common attributes that we find in music of togetherness, of harmony, of peace, and of love, it was Billy. Billy lived in such a way to be the life that was consistent with what God has called each and every one of us to do. We are all to be that spiritual person in God's eyes, to produce beauty in form and togetherness and harmony and peace, and to express love to one another. But just as we see in this fallen state of this world that we currently live in, we know that each and every one of us must pass through that veil that Billy has passed through. We must all go through that state of transition. There was a song that we loved together. American Pie by Don McLean was our favorite song. Billy actually taught that song to both of my boys, and many of you will remember how the song begins. And now that the song is in the public domain, I'll take some liberties and try to express how the song begins. It starts out a long, long time ago. I can still remember how that music used to make us smile. And Billy knew if he had the chance that he would make those people dance, and maybe the people would be happy for a while. Happy for a while. And in his presence, we were all happy for a while. For these last 58 years, 40 plus years that I shared with Billy as my best friend. But as we know, every song must come to an end. In the good word, the Bible, in the book of the Revelation, chapter 18 and verse 22, God says it this way, regarding the end of this world that we live in and the start of a new and better existence that we will all experience. And the voice of the harpers and musicians and the pipers and the trumpeters shall be heard no more at all in thee. Talking about this world. Just as the music man has left the stage, this system that we currently live in will one day also change. This verse in the Bible speaks of silencing the music. It speaks of a transition that God has already written, that He has already planned. It speaks about the end leading to a new beginning, and the opportunity for us, each and every one of us, to be together with Billy again and never have to say goodbye. Anyone who has read the good book understands that though our hearts may be sad, today, there's always good news when it comes to God. This is where I begin to tell you about some of the conversations that Billy has had with me over the last few years. We talked about every time that we came together, one of the first things that Billy wanted to talk about was something new and fresh that God has shown him in His Word. And we talked about some of the deepest things in the Word of God. And most of those times, most of those conversations, I walked away being more blessed than Billy. 1 Thessalonians 4 and verse 13 is one verse I remember us talking about. And this is what it says. And Grace, I'll have you listen to this. But I would not have you to be ignorant concerning them which have fallen asleep, that ye sorrow not, even as others which have no hope. For if we believed in Jesus, that He died and rose again, even so, them which sleep in Jesus will God bring back together with Him. For this, 1 Corinthians chapter 15, beginning at verse 53, says it a little differently. It says, for this corruptible must put on incorruption, and this mortal body must put on immortality. So when this corruptible have put on incorruption, and this mortal has put on immortality, then shall be brought forth the saying, death has been swallowed up in victory. The book of Job, chapter 14 and verse 1 says it this way: let not your heart be troubled. Ye believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house there are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. And I go and prepare a place for you. And I will come myself, that where I am, there you will be also. So we have these verses, these promises in God's Word to help us in times like this to understand that even though we stand here today with heavy hearts, with sadness, because of the loss of our dear friend, our son, our brother, we know that this is not the end. This is how our favorite song ends, and again, I'll take some liberties. On June 21st, I spoke with two ladies who sang the blues, and I asked them for some happy news, and they just smiled and walked away. I went down to the sacred store where I'd heard the music years before, but the man said that the music would not play. And in the streets the children screamed, the lovers cried, and the poets dreamed, but not a word was spoken. The church bells all were broken. And the three men I admire most, the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost, they caught the last train for the coast. Today, my music man died. Now everyone knows this next part, so I'll ask that you all sing along with me. And they were singing, bye, bye, Miss American Pie.
Drove my Chevy to the levee, but the levee was dry. Them good old boys were drinking whiskey and rye, singing, this'll be the day that I die. This'll be the day that I die.
One more time. And they were singing, bye, bye, Miss American Pie. Drove my Chevy to the levee, but the levee was dry. Them good old boys were drinking whiskey and rye, singing, this'll be the day that I die. The music man has left the stage. The record has ended. The concert is over. But thanks be to God that music is just not the physical. It's not the formal stage performance. It's not the vinyl album that we touch and hold, but music is that thing that transcends space and time. It lingers in our hearts and in our spirits. Music is eternal. And even though the music man has left the stage and the show has ended on this side of eternity, we know that the show actually never ends. Those same attributes that we spoke of earlier, form, beauty, togetherness, love, Billy is now performing in a heavenly concert hall. We're going to miss him. We're going to miss him. I thank God for times that we did have together. My pause now just to say, I love you, brother. I miss you. I can't wait until that day when we are back together again, singing that song that will never end. One more time for Billy. Bye, bye, Miss American Pie.
Drove my Chevy to the levee, but the levee was dry. And good old boys were drinking whiskey and rye, singing, this'll be the day that I die. This'll be the day that I die.
Give me just a moment. Why should I feel discouraged? Why should the shadows come? Why should my heart feel lonely, longing for heaven and home? But Jesus is my portion, a countless friend is he. His eye is on the sparrow, and I know he watches over me. I sing because I'm happy. I sing because I'm free, and his eyes on the sparrow, and I know he watches over me. Whenever I am tempted, whenever clouds arise, when songs give place to sighing, when hope within me dies, I draw the closer to him. From care he sets me free. His eye is on the sparrow, and I know he watches over me. I sing because I'm happy. I sing because I'm free, and his eyes on the little bitty sparrow, and I know he watches, and I know he watches, and I know he watches over me.
everybody. My name is Greg McAbee. First of all, I got to thank Greg and Terry for the beautiful words about my friend Billy. I had some stuff prepared, but it would appear that I was plagiarizing Greg Bailey. Because it is amazing that we all had a similar experience with our friend Billy. I will get to say I have the award for knowing the longest. I met him on March 11th, 1963, when he was born. Our mothers were pregnant together both times, and he's been my friend his entire life. So we've had a lot. I feel like I grew up in Hendersonville. We were there so much. Our dads played golf all the time. And so we would come to Hendersonville and we would come to visit. And we always had to run out. We were given $1 and we would go out and we could buy one comic book and one 45 single. Now, you young people don't remember what the singles were. But as everybody has said, Billy loved his music. The comics were easy. Billy had to have the latest Spider-Man comic and I had to have the latest Incredible Hulk. But we would debate the music for a long time. We could only buy one song and what would we get? And he always loved those long ones. When you talk about American Pie, Hotel California, it was 7 minutes long. It was going to be his favorite song. He used to play a game, and you talk about how artistic he was. We would bring all our 45 singles together and put them in a stack, and you would have to go through and pick one randomly, and you would have to act out the song. That's a very Billy thing. And I still remember the day he pulled out Hotel California, and he had to act out that crazy song in 7 minutes. But our real love was comic books. We grew up collecting comic books, and we rekindled that love about 20 years ago. We both have amassed a collection of over 11,000 comic books together, and we have been all over the country looking for them and buying them, and it has always been a treat to be with him. And you're right, he has no enemies and he is never a stranger. We would go to these comic shows and I would be glad I was with him because I knew I didn't know anybody, and we would get there and he knew everybody, and I was like, how do you know the comic guy from Baltimore? It's not even possible we never even been to Baltimore, but that's what Billy was. He knew everybody and he was their friend, and the best part about it is that made them your friend too, because we all had that common experience, and it is amazing to hear the stories that we've all had that experience with Billy. I was told a long time ago when I first got to a church in Charlotte, talking about this journey and what are we doing and why are we doing it and where are we going. And I was told that we're not put here as human beings to have a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings put here to have a human experience. And a lot of times we don't get that, but Billy always got it. He was always spiritual. He always made it better for everybody around him. I was very honored that he chose me as his friend. And I miss him, but I look forward to seeing him very soon. And it's hot, and there's food, and Billy would be very upset if I kept anybody from getting to the food. Because we all went to the Beacon, and he loved his chili cheeseburgers from Rush's and Columbia. When he would go down to Wild Dudes, he would always send me a picture of him eating chili cheeseburgers to make me feel bad. So, in honor of Billy's love of music, family, friends, we're here to celebrate a great life, a guy who got it right and did it right, and we're all better. We'll all see you soon. Thank you, Grace.